the hospital flip. A hospital flip is sort of like a half kickflip, which then gets whipped back around by the front foot. It's a trick that can seem pretty hard, but if you have your kickflips down, it's really not too bad. The only tricks that you should probably know before trying this one are an ollie and a kickflip. And if you can do these little Casper flip over things, it could help, but it's definitely not necessary. This trick only has three main parts. There's the pop, the half flick / pulling back with your front foot, and the landing. And these all come together in one quick movement in order to pull this one off. For the foot placement of this trick, I put my feet almost like I do for a kickflip, except my front foot is a little bit more angled towards the nose. You can put your front foot a little further or closer to the front bolts depending on your preference, but I like to put mine about an inch or two below the bolts. I like to put my back foot with the ball of my foot in the center of the tail, but you can pretty much put it wherever you feel most comfortable with a kickflip. So my feet pretty much look like this when I'm rolling. So the first part of this trick assumes the fact that you already understand the fundamentals of a kickflip. If not, I'd recommend you go watch the how to kickflip video and then come back to this one. For the first part of this trick, I would say just get really comfortable flicking your board. Make sure that you understand the mechanics of the actual flick with your front foot, because it's that motion that we're going to kind of mess around with. Pretty much if you can do this, then you're in good shape for the next step of this trick. This next little practice step is optional. I think it can actually be harder than just going for it and trying the actual trick itself. But this step involves flicking the board like you would for a kickflip, but only halfway, and letting your front foot stay underneath the board. If you can do this, it's good practice to get the feeling of not flicking your board too much and not letting your front foot fly too far away from the board. Since during this trick, your front foot actually never follows completely through with the flick, this trick could help you to get the feeling of keeping your foot under the board. Before I get into the next step, I want to break down what the front foot actually is going to be doing during this trick. Your front foot starts off just like a kickflip. It slides up towards the nose just like you're going to flick off the edge, except once you get up to the nose and the board starts to rotate, your front foot pulls back and flips the board over on itself. So when you're thinking about this trick, think about the fact that your foot slides up, but you're not going to follow through with the flick. You can practice standing still on your tail and just sliding your foot up, but don't flick off the edge, just get it up to the nose. Once you've gotten to this point, the board will start to flip over, but it won't flip over as fast as it does for a kickflip. It should just kind of flip over on top of your foot. Because you didn't follow through with the flick, your foot will still be in the way when your board is going to flip over, so the board will only flip over halfway and stop. It's when you've gotten to this point where the board is basically resting upside down on top of your front foot that all you really have to do is pull back on your front foot in order to swing the board back around. This might feel a little counterintuitive at first because it's a little strange to try and flick out and then pull back the opposite direction. But it surprisingly doesn't take too much force with your front foot in order to swing the board back around. With no board, the movement with your front foot kind of just looks like this. Also, keep in mind that most of the time when you do this trick, the board's not going to flip over entirely onto your foot so it's completely upside down. It may just turn 90 degrees more or less and then flip over from there, but it really doesn't matter. So the next practice step is to actually put all that knowledge together and practice flicking and bringing the board back around while standing on the ground. Because this trick is mainly in the front foot, you can practice this with your back foot standing on the ground and still pretty much get the same exact feel for the trick. So just practice half flicking a kickflip, and as soon as your foot is getting towards the end of the nose, pull it back around in order to swing the board around. If you can do this successfully, then you've basically got 90% of the trick down. And all you have to do next is the same thing, except actually jump off your back foot when you pop, just like you would for a kickflip, and try and land with both feet on the board. You can also just go straight to practicing this trick while rolling and still just landing with one foot. Everything will still be the same movement, starting the trick off just like a kickflip, and your front foot half flicking and bringing the board back. If you just can't seem to get the board to stay on your foot or flip back over properly, here are a few common mistakes and how you can fix them. If you're missing the scoop around with your front foot and the board just flicks like a kickflip, you may want to change your front foot's position. Placing it further onto the board or angling it a bit more may help this problem. If the board isn't rotating fully and you end up landing 90 degrees, it may be because your front foot is a little too far down on the board and you might want to try moving it just a bit more towards the nose. This can help put more power into your front foot to swing the board around faster. It could also be that you're trying to swing the board around too soon after flicking, and you have to wait for just a second more for your foot to be a bit further up the nose. Some obvious mistakes are if the board's going too far in front of you, you may be leaning too far back and kicking the board out, and conversely, if the board is staying too far behind you, you may be leaning too far over the nose. One of the ways that you can fix any of these problems, and it's just a great way to learn in general, is by holding on to something. Holding on to something while trying a new trick is a great way to eliminate some of the fear involved, and this can really help you experiment and see what you're doing right or wrong without too much of a consequence in case you mess up. So here's a quick recap for this trick. Even though your foot doesn't follow through, make sure you understand the concept of flicking your foot like you would for a kickflip. After that, try the same type of movement except don't follow through with your front foot and let the board just land on top of your foot upside down. Now, try and do the actual movement of the trick, but while standing still. Flip the board over halfway while keeping your foot under the nose, and then bring your foot backwards so it'll flip the board over. Next, you can try the whole trick while standing still and trying to land with both feet. If you're having trouble, practice the trick while holding on to something. Now you can start to practice this trick while rolling, and you can still try landing with just one foot for now. And finally, if you have all of this down, then you just put together all of the parts and land the trick. So here are a few of my hospital flips. Take note of how my back foot just acts like it would for a kickflip. That is, it pops the tail, comes up, and doesn't really do much else. All of the action is in my front foot, which slides up the nose, but once it gets to the edge and the board is flipping over, it grabs the tail from underneath and pulls the board back around. This can be a daunting trick because it's so strange, but I guarantee you that if you go out and you try it a few times, you'll actually start to understand the mechanics of how it works and see that it's really not too bad. So I hope that this video helped you. This is a really cool trick to have down because it's a little weird, but not too weird and not too hard. If you need any further help with it or just more specific detail, just comment down below and I'll do my best to help you. And besides that, thank you for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.